so that we can record our call today. And if you're in the call and you have any questions, feel free to hit the Q&A button. That's going to be in the bottom toolbar. You'll see Q&A. Drop your questions in there, and we'll save a little time towards the end of our call today to talk through any questions that may come up and try to get your questions answered regarding HubSpot and nonprofit operations. Perfect. Yep, we will definitely have the recording, and we'll make sure to get that sent out as well. So if you can't stay for the whole call, that's not a problem. But I appreciate you joining. While we are in DFW area, sometimes we have individuals join from other places. So if you don't mind dropping in the chat, like where are you meeting in from? If you're in DFW area, you can drop the city that you're in. But if you're in another state, you can drop the state that you're in. The Q&A section on the call is going to be in the far right on the bottom menu. You might have to click on more to see a few other options depending on which side screen that you're on. Let's give it another minute or so here and we'll get started. Today we're going to be talking through a few different things with HubSpot. We're going to talk specifically about marketing campaigns today and tracking that. We'll talk a little bit more about like fundraising campaigns as well and what that may look like within HubSpot. We'll talk about just marketing in general and enhancing that. We'll give you guys a little bit of a demo of some of the work that we've been doing with some of our clients that are in the nonprofit sector and how that's looking and turning out. And in terms of donation management, what that looks like, event management as well. And then we'll do some live demonstrations here during our call. And then we'll just talk about why you may want to even, look at implementing some things. Our goal today is to show what's possible with HubSpot when it comes to nonprofits. A lot of times what we find is that nonprofits that are using HubSpot are either not using it to its full potential, and a lot of times that comes to just not knowing what it can do. And sometimes that might be getting team buy-in. So hopefully some of this you'll be able to share with your team. You guys will be able to see what's possible. The thing that I'll start out by saying is that, if you've been using HubSpot, you may feel like, hey, this might not be the right system for us. And a lot of times that is just due to process and the implementation not being there. It's going to really be like any other system that is not nonprofit specific. I personally believe that the reason why you may want to go with a system that is not nonprofit specific is because you want to be able to do more than just your nonprofit operations. Nonprofits are obviously businesses, and you want to do things past that. Things like on your finance side, things on your deal management side, things on your marketing side, the building the customer relationship side. A lot of those things overlap between a for-profit and nonprofit organization. And some of the nonprofit specific tools kind of lock you into a box. And so one of the things that we're doing with HubSpot is trying to help you get out of that box and have a system that really starts to unify your operations. So that's what we'll talk about today. So what I'm going to do is, since we have this recorded, anybody that is not in can join later and they can catch up on the recording. So I'll go ahead and get started. So like I said, today we're going to talk about a little bit of everything. So let me share my screen for a second. And you guys might feel like I'm jumping around. That's why that Q&A is so important, so I can make sure I'm coming back to the things that you may need and hit on that. Elijah, I know you mentioned that you didn't see the Q&A. Did you get access to that Q&A section? And let me go ahead and get my screen brought up here. Okay. If you're not seeing the Q&A for some reason, feel free to go ahead and just drop them in the comments, and I will try to toggle back between the two and get the questions answered once we get to the Q&A section. I'll also check from time to time on the comments as well. So as I'm going through certain things, we'll see it. So right now you should see my screen. You'll see nonprofit demo resources. This is just some stuff my team has put together to help us make these demos a little bit easier. If you've worked with us before and gone through a demo, you may have seen this, or if not, and you're planning on it, you will see something similar. But right now, what we're actually in at the moment is a dashboard. And dashboards are primarily used for things like reporting, right? So if we were to go into something like contact insights, for example, we will be able to see different insights within our reporting tools. If we were to go into like marketing, for example, we would be able to see different insights in marketing, like sessions, new contacts, customers, those types of things. One of the things that I will say, unfortunately, at this time, HubSpot has not created a way for us to change some terminology. So a lot of terminology still feels like a for-profit organization. What I would ask is that you kind of ignore that part because a lot of the things are still universal in terms of usage. So where you might see customer, you might call them donors. Where you might see a gift or a donation in HubSpot, they'll call it a deal. But essentially, they're the same thing and will work very similarly. So the things that I'll go over is first, I'm going to go through our navigation so you can see a little bit of that. So on the top, we have our new navigation actually that just got released where we have a global search. It means that we can search for pretty much anything in the system. So if we were to start to type in pretty much any like word, we will start to see things start to pop up and populate within our system where we have contacts, companies, emails, in our case, event tickets that are in place, events, different things like that. And it's essentially searching our entire database so that we have one source of truth that we can go to when we're looking for something to find it. That becomes a very powerful feature when it comes to trying to find things quickly. Across the top, we have a couple of tools. HubSpot does have calling features with HubSpot from a phone perspective. We have a pretty robust marketplace for apps, all the third-party apps that you can actually add in your tool. So if you're looking for donation softwares and things like that that might integrate, that's where you would find that information. And then we have things like our settings and so on. So I'll start by talking about the left menu when I start to get into marketing specific or fundraising. On the left side, we have a couple things. We'll see bookmarks. This allows us to save different things here that we may use a lot. So for example, I can hover over any of these items and actually bookmark these to show up at the top. We have built this to support our Unify 360 product, which is built specifically for nonprofits, and it's built on the HubSpot foundation. So some of the things that you're going to see here may not be in your HubSpot portal because they're customly built based on our requirements and the clients that we've worked with. So that's going to be things like event ticket types, event tickets, households, volunteers. We have built management systems in HubSpot to replace those tools. And that was all with the idea of, again, unifying your data, unifying your systems within the tool. So I'm going to jump over here for a second to our website. You'll see that we have a little thing here. You're able to review this website as well. If you go to directionfwd.com, you can kind of play around with it. This is a sample site that we built. It is built 100% on HubSpot. Everything here is on HubSpot. From your chat is built in HubSpot. So if you were to start to chat here, it will be your team will manage that in HubSpot. Everything here from your pages in terms of what you're focusing on and what your features are all going to be within HubSpot itself. And this is just a theme that we decided to do on the HubSpot growth theme, which is included with HubSpot if you have the Content Hub. We have built an event, the event module that we designed where it shows our events and gives us the ability to view an event landing page and register. You guys will see on this page that pop-up happening a lot just because we want to remind you this is not a real nonprofit. So it's important. So you can see here different things that we have like tickets and remaining seats and being able to register for that ticket and that seat. Everything, again, you're seeing is 100% developed in HubSpot in this case. And there's a reason I'm going to keep running that home that I'll talk about here in a little bit. Things like resources. If we look at things like articles, we can see that we have our blog here, which is also hosted on HubSpot, so that we can see different blog posts. If we look at things like CTAs, for example, We have our things where it's transcribing into audio or blog posts, CTA. So the nice thing about some of this stuff that you're seeing with CTAs and things like that is we can actually see if a specific contact visited this blog post. We can see if a specific contact clicked on this CTA, if they opted into this particular guide. And we can track all of that data back. And the beautiful thing about doing that is that has given us a unique ability to gather that data to segment them better, right? That allows us to give better journeys, paint better stories, and take them down certain paths that we want to take them down. Here is going to be more of a resource library. We can pick different resources that we can have. If we were to click into these, this will take you to a landing page, again, built in HubSpot, where they can then register for this particular program. When we get into things like volunteering, this part here is where we're building out, again, the volunteer management side of things, which I'm not going to go into today. But if we're looking to donate and more of gifts, we'll be able to come to a page like this with our donation. Now, this is here will be more of a QGive donation experience integrated with HubSpot. So if you use QGive or use any of the other donation softwares, a lot of them will integrate, whether they have a native integration or they have a using something like Zapier or something like that to integrate. So that's all going to be on the website side of things. So pretty simple. These websites are fully customizable, layouts, views, colors, fonts, everything is fully customizable like any other thing. But where it gets, I would say, beneficial in understanding different things about how you can utilize this data, I'm going to go into the settings of this page so that you can see what it looks like, is that we can start to customize a user experience based on the what do you call it, the audience that we're talking to. Okay, so right now we have this under our default here, but if we know that somebody has volunteered and they have our engagement type volunteer, we can actually change that user experience. So when they land on that same page, they actually see something different. So they would have a different experience that is pointing them more towards the volunteer journey than it is towards the donor journey. So we can, and again, this can be done in this area. We can change this image on the background, right? We can change the entire layout of the page if we want to, the entire look of the page if we want to give a different experience. And the only reason why we can do that, which I'll come back here and I'm going to come over to our demo contact and show why that something like this would be possible, is inside of this particular donor. And I'll explain this layout here in a second. What we're tracking is engagement types, is a feature that we put in, and we're tracking and we're setting using automation based on the engagement of that user. We're setting them as a volunteer. So then when they go to the web page here, the system, if it recognizes who they are, so they're using the same computer, they're engaging with their emails, they're doing these different things, the HubSpot code will recognize them and say, oh, this person's a donor. Let's show them something different. Now, and there is some safeguards in place where, for example, you might want to say, if this person's a donor and a volunteer, you might want to have them more in the donor section. So you might want to show that in terms of the hierarchy of how things work. So that is ways that you can kind of customize that online experience. Some of the other things that I'll point out here is in our contact management. One of the great things about HubSpot when we're thinking about nonprofit is how do we get all of our data in one unified place? And one of the ways that we want to think about this is if we have multiple teams that are working contacts specifically, right? You have your marketing team that's nurturing and cultivating. You have your fundraising team that is looking for prospects and outreaching. And then you have like your servicing teams, your programs that are actually fulfilling relationship requirements and things like that. How do we track all that, and how do we let marketing know that fundraising just got a donation? So don't reach out to this person asking for a donation because they just gave a donation, right? How do we solve problems like that? And some of the ways that we do that is because we have a unified contact, right? So it's not like we have one contact for fundraising, one contact for marketing, and one contact for our, other departments that we have. It's all in one place. So what you can see in here in this contact is we have a couple of things of how we can engage this contact, from notes to emails to calls to tasks to meetings, as well as all of these other things that we can log and track within the system. All of this is done right in HubSpot. So the emails are in HubSpot, the notes are in HubSpot, the calls can happen from HubSpot depending on your call solution, or if you decide to adopt the HubSpot recommended calls. Tasks are right in HubSpot. Your meetings can even be scheduled directly in HubSpot with individuals so that everything tracks back to the contact. So when I start to look at the kind of data that I'm tracking communications, contact activity, any type of updates that's happening, as well as our team activity if they're scheduling meetings, putting notes in tasks, so that I get a full view of this particular contact and how they're engaging with us. I have things like their interest. Now, interest is pretty cool because this is something that you can set using automation based on, let's say, I have a contact. And so I'll show you kind of the way that we look at this interest is that if I have someone looking at our blog, for example, and they happen to be reading a story or reading a post or something on a specific topic, let's say, for example, they are reading something on health or they're reading something on education, then what I may do is update their segments of what they're interested in based on the data that I'm getting of what they're doing, right? So that when I say, hey, I want to go and I want to reach out, or I want to ask for donations, or I want to ask for volunteers, for everyone that seems to have an interest in, a specific segment, in this case, health or education, I can then go and do that. And we'll talk about that in a minute when we start to get to things like how do we look at contacts in more of as a whole in terms of our segments. So hopefully that helps answer some of that. We'll see we have different properties. We have different things in terms of how we're tracking certain types of information. And a lot of this is custom. It is implemented into the system. If you were to go sign up for a HubSpot account today, you're going to be missing this nonprofit specific things. And that's going to feel like maybe this is not the right tool for us. The benefit of taking the time and installing these things and doing this is because you get this unified experience, which is going to allow you to do a lot. So I'll explain this hierarchy of this layout really quick. So the way that I typically explain this to our clients is that on the left side, we have everything about the record that we're in, whether it's a contact, company, or deal. Everything about them is here. We can get to all their properties here and see everything on them in terms of the data that we're collecting. The center is giving us an overview of their activity, how they're engaging with their organization, with our organization, and how we're engaging with them. That's going to keep a running tally of what that looks like. On the right, we're seeing things about their associations. So, for example, we can see if they're associated to a household and what the total amount of that household is. We can see, and I mentioned this earlier, deals. In this case, these will be your gifts that are happening. So if they have any gifts that they're associated with that they've given, and you can see the information on if those were fulfilled, partially fulfilled, if they were cash, workplace, non-cash pledges, what that looks like. We can do lead tracking for more of a prospecting of finding individuals that we may want to ask to be in some of our societies or something like that based on their giving and their volunteering and things like that. So you can see we have a plethora of things if they're associated with a company or not. We have, if we have any tickets, volunteers, if they volunteered with us, we have that. If they've attended events, we'll have that. So we have all this data, right? We're tracking all these things and we have all this stuff that we can go and see a full view of this particular customer or donor. In this, we can go into one of these and we can see what it's related to and how it's related, right? So I can see this donation that's fulfilled, what pipeline that it's in. I can see different information about the donation itself so that I can learn. And again, I have all the activity that is related to this gift here. So especially for fundraising teams that need to be able to keep track of what's happening, they need to track a task in order to follow up with somebody or to cultivate somebody, they have the ability to do that right in one place. So a lot of cool things when it comes to that and keeping everything in the same place. I'm just going to really quick just check on my chat to see if I have anything there. Okay, I don't have anything there. Check on my Q&A, nothing there. Okay, perfect. All right, so I will keep on going. The other things that we can look at is going into things like we talked about a lot of the stuff already here. I'm not going to dig in too deep in the custom stuff because I kind of want to keep it to some of the stuff that will be possible for most of the nonprofits that are out there. When we start to think about marketing, in campaign tracking, I'm going to click on that for a second. What we're able to do here is we're able to track different types of campaigns. And in these campaigns, what we're able to see is everything that is related to a campaign. Now, what's important here is that one big gap that typically happens with really most marketing teams is showing how the marketing efforts that are being put in are contributing to revenue, or contributing to new contacts, right, to reach. And so that's what these campaigns will help you do. So in here, we have the details of the campaign that we're able to pick. So we can put names, owners, audiences, all this different stuff we can connect here. But then we can also connect assets to this. So all the things that we talked about or that you've seen in HubSpot, like blog posts, call to actions, forms, landing pages, emails, marketing events, all of these different things that you have, you can contribute to a campaign. The benefit of us doing this is that, as you'll see here in the performance, this is going to start to track all the data specifically for this campaign. How many sessions have we had? How many new contacts have we gained? How many contacts has this campaign influenced? We can start to see how much revenue was influenced by this specific campaign, right? So we may have campaigns for our emerging leaders. We may have campaigns for our certain societies, or we may have campaigns for volunteerism and things like that that we want to be able to track and see how those things. So it doesn't even necessarily have to be revenue driven. It can also just be, like I said, reach. How many new contacts are we getting? So you get a lot of that data that's going to track here. You can see where that data is coming from these different sources. But it gets even better than that and even deeper. You get into your attributes and start to understand your attributes within your marketing for this campaign. Again, all of your assets, you can start to see what are those assets so that you can decide if these need to be updated or not. You can start to track tasks for this campaign, so more project management. Budgeting, so we can track what is our budget, so what is our spend. We can add all this stuff here so we can keep track, are we staying on budget with this particular initiative? And then you can get to your activity to start understanding what's happening in relation to this campaign, who's updating what, who's adding what, who's moving what, that kind of thing. So this is just going to give you a level of knowledge to understand if the work that you're doing is actually helping or not helping, which can be very valuable. Especially when it comes to nonprofits, and our funds can sometimes be limited or restricted. So this lets us know if the things that we're doing are working or not. So in HubSpot, when we start to think about those different assets that it's talking about, we're looking at our email marketing. So we no longer need a third-party email tool. We're looking at our social. We no longer need a third-party social tool. We're looking at our ads, our forms, our CTAs, as well as a new thing that they brought, which is our SMS. Which allows us to do our text message outreach. When we get over to things like content, it allows us to do a whole other level of things when it comes to things like our website, our landing pages, our blogs, podcasting, if you're doing that. Embeds is if you're a client that is using something like WordPress, meaning your site is not built on HubSpot. You can still create embeds to bring some of the dynamicness into your WordPress site. Knowledge bases, customer portals, database stuff. It's going to be things that might track like team members and things like that that you can then display on your website. When we get into some of this stuff down here, which is pretty nice, we can get into things like remixes, which is more of an AI tool. It's actually a pretty cool tool. I won't spend a lot of time in here, but you can use AI essentially to populate content like blog posts, social posts, emails. It will write it for you based on other content you have or topics that you have. And so you can utilize those to really streamline as well as scale your content. SEO gives us a level into our SEO to understand what's happening, what's the health of our sites and things like that, what's the traffic. That'll give us some insights on that. Memberships are what it sounds like. This allows you to set up membership sites. So if you need to give access to certain protected content, certain protected pages, you can manage those, the access to those things. And the Design Manager allows you to do a little bit more complex things when it comes to developing custom online experiences, whether those are custom portals, custom modules, things like that. So a couple other things that I will hit on. So we talked a little bit about campaign tracking. We've talked about fundraising, which I do want to go in a little bit more in that. So that will happen on your deal level. When you start to think about what those deals look like, and all of that information will get tracked in your pipeline so that you can understand what is in your pipeline, how much is weighted, what's the total open. This just starts to give you an idea of how many gifts may be pending, no matter what type of gifts they are, how much you've are collecting on those gifts, and so on. So it gives you an idea to kind of give some forecasting in place of what the financial side may look like as you're working through and building relationships and doing your ask to individuals or organizations. This is a way for you to track that and pipelines. What you'll see is we have multiple different pipelines here, depending on what it is that we are wanting to track. Sometimes with clients, we may do one pipeline to keep it simple with different deal types and things like that. So there's a lot of ways that you can do this. These are just some of the ways that we recommend it to be able to track it. We already looked at a deal earlier, but specifically giving you essentially the same feel and layout as a contact. This is where we get to enablement, where that enablement becomes very powerful in the sense that, it's kind of like, I feel like when Facebook came out, it's like Facebook kind of unified the same experience across everything that they had, so that if you knew how to use it one place, you could use it another place. Or you can, or almost anybody would be able to show you how to use it. Same thing with HubSpot, whereas no matter what record you're in, they essentially look the same, even though they have different data. So our deal looks very similar to our contact, and our contact looks very similar to our company, and so on and so on. That's just going to help with that enablement side of allowing you to really get involved inside of the system and adopt to it. So let's go and talk through for a second list. That was something that I brought up earlier. We were talking about all this data and how we want to bring this into something. So inside of the system, we're able to bring all this data into different type of list within our system. So if we wanted to see, for example, all donors, we would be able to run reports based on this data to see all of the donors in our system. And then those donors, this list here can be utilized in different ways. So one of the primary ways is email communication. I may say that if I want to send an email to everyone that's on my contact type donor, so that you can email them and be assured that they are a donor. Things that we're looking at here can be complex filtering and things like that to get different types of segments that we want to make. These lists also come very much in handy when it comes to automating. Maybe I want to send certain communications out when somebody is added to this list. Maybe I want to welcome them as a donor or things like that. So we can trigger automation, segmentations, all kinds of things. So pretty cool stuff when it comes to list. This is a way, especially for marketing, to do their segmentation, for development to do segmentation for certain types of automations that might go out or certain types of system updates that need to happen. This is how we transform data to get what we need to get. When it comes to things like fundraising, for example, we're going to be living more in things like views, which you will see at the top. We have these different types of views that we can have all kinds of views. We can create custom views, save views to help us get to our work faster. Maybe I want a view that shows me individuals or organizations that gave last year but have not given yet this year. And so I can create a view that shows me that, so I can easily pop in every day and see who's newly added to that list and do my prospecting that way to see if I can get them to give again this year. So very cool ways to be able to track that and see your data in different ways. Donation management, we talked a little bit about that. Obviously, that's going to be with your deals. That's going to be your gifts. If you have a gift in the system, you will be able to track that relationship here inside of this, the communication, the meetings that are involved, the people that may be involved, like in terms of team members. You have the ability to do things like if you're having a note, I can comment and I can find someone to message, and they're going to get that notification in HubSpot so they can then go and answer. Maybe I'm trying to find out information. Maybe I'm trying to get collaboration, whatever that might look like. We can do that within the system itself. Let's see. Some of the other things we talked about, event management stuff a little bit when I showed that on the website. Event management, pretty much everything you see from here down is a custom object. I'll explain that for a second. Custom objects are a function that HubSpot gives us the ability through different ways of essentially developing additional modules or databases within the system to create a customized experience for an organization. So to give an example, A car dealer may need to track cars. HubSpot doesn't have that built out of the box, so you can create a custom object for cars. In nonprofit case, we want to track volunteers, so we have this for volunteers. Custom objects require a lot of architecture work in order to figure out what that looks like, how it should function, how it's supported. But the beautiful thing is that it's there. That means that we're not limited in the technology. We don't get a year down the line and say, oh, we can't do this, right? It's more of how do we do this versus can't do this. So that gives you a very powerful tool. Some of the other things that I've talked about earlier was emails. You actually send the email directly through HubSpot, which is nice so that it gets tracked. And here, there's no third-party services or anything to be able to do that. It's all done in HubSpot. And you get cool activity from things like, for example, because everything is in HubSpot, even down to your social post, what we start to see is that if we send a social post from HubSpot and somebody clicks on that social post and becomes a contact, on that contact, we can see that they engage with that social post, which is pretty magical when it comes to trying to understand how you're gaining people, what's attracting people, and how they're connecting with your organization. Okay. Things like and these are going to be more technical things, but I'll just hit on them quickly. Things like managing your ads, building your forms. You can build forms right inside of HubSpot. No need for a third-party form system. CTAs are going to be things like your pop-ups that come up or the things that are in your blog posts. I showed a little bit of that on the sample site that we had earlier today. So that's going to allow us to see that, or to add those to our website to create experiences. So when you think about how does HubSpot help nonprofits, the things that I will say is when you start to think through your CRM, right, your record management of your contacts, your companies, things like that can be added on, like households, volunteers, events, all these different things. It starts to unify those systems where typically a nonprofit would have, 5, 10, 15 different tools, and all of them are somewhat disconnected, right? So you spend a lot of time trying to clean data, import data, export data, and still will have a less than excellent outcome in terms of the quality of the data, right? So because everything's in one place, it allows us to do all this right in the system. And it allows us to have everything in one system so we don't have to do all the import, export, merging, and all that kinds of stuff. HubSpot also comes with a plethora of data quality tools that you can utilize, right? So monitoring your data and understanding your duplicates, understanding properties that are being used and not being used. Records, how many records are in our system? How many of those records have formatting issues, right? And so we can see those types of things. Data syncing. So if we're syncing things to our system, what does that look like? Workflows. So workflows are how we do automations in HubSpot. So are those being utilized? So it's showing like if they're unused, if they need review. So it was like if they break or have a problem, you have a place that you can come and see all of this information to make sure your system is staying healthy. And the reason why you want your system to stay healthy is because it's going to give you the best outcomes when you can count on the data. We have different things like property insights. We can dig deeper into what those are, and we can see like our fill rate, like how many of the what percentage of the contacts or companies within our organization is utilizing these different properties, so that we can again keep things clean. We might want to see, are there any properties that we can get rid of that we're not using or barely using? And so then the question becomes, do we need them? Again, your data sync is going to be through like integrations. Your data monitoring is going to be through your duplications and things like that. Formatting issues might be like names, capitalizing, and it's going to give you and tell you what those issues are and have you clean it up. So, just some nice tools to help keep your database in check. The last thing that I think I will cover here in our call today is going to be around reporting. So we talked a little bit about reporting earlier when I talked about the dashboards. But some of the things that are extremely, I think, powerful with HubSpot is that you don't need a third-party tool to build powerful reporting. So when we think about things like our dashboards, our reporting, when we think about sales analytics, this is going to be more of your donation or fundraising analytics. So just replace sales with fundraising. When we think about service analytics, it's going to be more of your program management, things like that you can do. We have forecasting. We can set goals. So maybe we want a certain amount of gifts and we want to set up goals for that. We have our integrations, custom events. We talked about data quality, depending on, and some of this stuff is going to depend on your subscription level, obviously. So if you don't see it in your program, the chances are your subscription does not have it available. But we're able to look at things like data sets and create data sets so that we can understand segments of data and use those segments of data to understand our database so that we can then um, uh, help our efforts, right, and improve our efforts. Data modeling. This is going to be something that shows us like what the data looks like in terms of database architecture, how different things connect, and all those types of things. Um, so we have a lot of these cool tools that allow us to do that. But I'm going to jump into reports for a second. You'll see that we have lots of reports that we can build in the system. HubSpot will come with some for you. But when it comes to creating a report, you have the ability to create simple reports like single objects, or we have custom reports where we can compare different objects. So, for example, we can say something like we want to see all, let's say, contacts that have a deal associated with them, but but have not given this year, but the history of their giving is over X amount, right? So they've given at some point, they've given at least $500, but they haven't given this year yet. And can you show me all of those contacts? I can easily build out that report within HubSpot. I can build customer journeys. How are people moving through our journey, and what does that conversion look like? I can use those journeys to do that. You have your attribute tracking to understand activities and interaction with the organization, understand things like conversation and revenue, all of that stuff's there. Then we can build our funnels, right? These are going to be things like our donor stages, right? Life cycle stages. These are going to be steps that we want to take people through and see what those conversion rates look like. That can be done here. HubSpot offers a lot of custom reporting, as you can see here in the system, but they give you the tools to build extremely powerful reporting that you can utilize within your organization, right? Because everything's not going to be a one size fits all, and that is something that is definitely known. So we are able to build those reports to get the information that we need to get. So I'm going to jump over to a dashboard really quick and talk through some dashboard settings and what becomes a little powerful there. So let's go and let's just look at, for example, here, I want to look at our web analytics for the time being. So if we look at these web analytics, we can see different types of reports. Within this data, we're able to do things like click into that data and see who those contacts are, right? What deals we have related to some of this stuff. So it gives you a level to dig into the data, which is really nice. We can start to see patterns of data based on like traffic in here. And this spreads to a lot, right? It spreads to our landing pages, our emails, our social, our ads, our deals, our service pipelines. Like this spreads through. Reporting can be spread through everything so that we can compare what's happening. And then within this, you're going to have certain people you may want to share with this dashboard with, some you don't. So you have access management on this. But you also have things like you can add videos, text, right? So maybe you have a video on here explaining this dashboard to your executive team or something. And you place that video on here with all of your other dashboards. Your other reports so they can go through those and dig through it. You can put details like descriptions on this, audit logs, right? You can see all this different stuff. Maybe you're presenting it and you want to go into full screen view and those types of things. Some of the other things that I wanted to talk about was going to be in things like, for example, if we were to go in here, we talked about this, you can set the owner of these dashboards, change the owner, give it names. You will see that in some of these things throughout the system, there may be some AI components to them as well. When we get into things like sharing, for example, I can share a copy, I'll share the URL itself to go to this. So if it's somebody that has a login to our HubSpot system, they can see that. I can also email this to someone as well. And I can set this, as you'll see here, as a recurring or one time. And if I decided to do this as a recurring, I can set my frequency of daily, weekly, monthly. I can set a time. I can decide to attach as a PDF or some other file type that's supported. And I can show it with filters. Maybe I added filters because I want to show a certain thing to someone. Once I set this up the way I want, I can go ahead and schedule that out, and that email will automatically go out to whoever it is that needs to see that. So maybe you have a marketing manager needs to get a weekly or monthly report to understand what the efforts are. Maybe you have fundraising needs to understand what those efforts that are happening. Maybe you're trying to understand the engagement that's happening and you want that to come every week. All of that stuff's there. Maybe you have executives that want to see very high level reporting. You can create that reporting, schedule that reporting, and have it go out on a weekly, monthly, or daily basis, depending on what they want. So, what we're talking about is cutting down on the time to do manual tasks. We're talking about standardizing reporting so that people get the answers they want when they want them. So, this gives us very powerful ways to understand the nonprofit, to understand where the funds are, to understand how the funds are coming in, understand how volunteers are engaging, to understand who might be a good fit next to be a volunteer, who might be a good fit next to be a donor, what corporations or organizations might be a good fit to be in partnership with. This gives you all of that in one single solution. And so, anyway, I hope that this was valuable and that this showed some insight in what is possible. HubSpot has so many features, so many ways to customize. We have built so many features into HubSpot for nonprofits specifically that it's too much, obviously, to talk about in a single call. But if this is something you want to learn more about, please let us know. You can email us at hello@processology.net. We would love to know if you have any feedback on this. Any type of events you might want to see. Maybe there's some specific nonprofit wise that you want to see, or maybe you want to know if it can do something. Also, feel free to reach out to our team. You can visit us at processology.net and check us out online and see how we can help your nonprofit improve, or the way that you're thinking about HubSpot, or the way that you're looking at it. Maybe your team's looking for buy-in on this and you have questions that need to get answered. We'll be a good resource for that and helping you figure out if it's the right move or not for your organization, or if you should continue to invest in it or not in your organization. So those are all great questions that I think we can definitely bring a lot of value into answering and save a lot of time, a lot of pain, a lot of back and forth by answering some of those questions. So anyway, I will leave it there. I feel like we covered a lot. I jumped around some other things, showed a little bit more than I was planning today, but I wanted you to get some good eyes on it and see if it would be a good fit for you in terms of some of these features, of some of these things that you can implement yourself, right? Like, it doesn't have to be looking at us or looking at any other partner. If you guys have the expertise within your organization, you know what's possible now. If you're looking for an organization that's done it before, you know where we are. So we're always here for you if you need that. But I think the biggest thing and the biggest reason why we wanted to do this topic is to show what was possible with HubSpot. And there's a lot more that we can do. So we'll definitely have some more nonprofit specific events coming up, as well as other industries like SaaS, professional-based organizations, some things around healthcare now that HubSpot now supports HIPAA, some things around education as well that you can utilize to do other things in terms of courses and enrollment and things like that. So we're really excited. We think that there's a beautiful future for HubSpot and the platform, and anybody that's using it, we think has more opportunity in their hands than they may even be aware of. And we're excited to be a part of that journey, especially for our friends here in the DFW area, to help them strengthen their HubSpot game and really take advantage of the platform. Thanks.